We have an exciting panel today. I'm excited. I think so is everyone else here. So I'm Siraj Khaliq from Atomico. I'm a partner at a London-based VC firm, previously an operator and founder of an AI-based business in the US, in Silicon Valley. And today, I think the thing that's, to me, exciting about this panel is we have three very, very accomplished people who are building and scaling AI businesses. Very different businesses, but as we'll see, some of the challenges across those are quite common, and really you might relate to these, as some of you in the audience will be starting businesses yourselves. So just to get going, we'll have a brief round of introductions, and we'll jump right in. So maybe in order, you could start, Shaukat, by introducing yourself and the company.
I'm Shaukat Shamim. I'm an entrepreneur. I say I'm a serial narcissist. I've tried a few companies, been very fortunate. I was in Yahoo from the very early days. And I run a company called Youplus. We are creating a video opinion intelligence engine where we understand people's opinion from videos, and we're indexing the world's opinion as they are expressing in a video format in vast amount of data.
Hi, everybody. I'm Hilyard. I'm COO of Healx. So Healx is a biotech company that's disrupting the pharmaceutical sector. So we're using machine learning to find novel drug disease matches, and then we're taking those predictions forward, testing them, validating them, and taking them all the way through to the clinic. So our first clinical study is going to be in Fragile X syndrome, and we're starting at the end of this year.
And hi, I'm Anders from Spacemaker. And modestly speaking, Spacemaker is attacking one of the oldest dinosaurs out there, the construction industry. And we do that by building a software that helps real estate developers and architects explore billions of different ways to solve a site from scratch all the way to the shovel is in the ground. And that creates significant improvements both on the utilization and also the soft qualities for the people living there.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, all of you. So the topic of how do you scale an AI business? Well, the first question is, well, why is that any different to scaling a non-AI business, right? And what is it that we're going to learn about today that is unique and particular to you guys? All of your businesses are built on data. That's one of the first differentiators and one of the first most important things for an AI-based business. There's also questions of culture, of talent, so we'll try and get through to all of those. One of the things that you often hear about is this virtuous cycle of data, where if you're to win, you start with maybe some unfair advantage in terms of access to data, but then that leads you to build a product, and that product leads you to interact with your users, internal or external, to gain more data, which allows you to improve your models, and this cycle kind of repeats itself. And that becomes a moat for you as a business that stops other businesses coming in and just replicating what you're doing. To what degree do you relate to that in your businesses? And we don't have to go in order like this, so start wherever you like. Maybe Anders, let's start with you and work backwards. This virtuous cycle of data, do you relate to that? Does that matter to you?
Actually, I completely relate to it, Siraj. And for us, remember that it's a very undigitized industry, right? So, meaning when you start developing a new site, you start basically from scratch. And the only thing you bear with you is the experience you have from former projects. So it's not structured in any way. So the more users, the more companies and usage we get on the platform, the better kind of the answers gets. But also we are able to aggregate learnings across the portfolio between customers and geos that hasn't been done before. So it creates an immense defensive moat, I think.
Hi, yeah, so I relate to that model at Healx, but actually our virtuous cycle is totally internal. So our customers are our cross-functional project teams, and they use the data to do the drug matching, the drug disease matching, and then the learnings that we get from it, from validating those predictions, we then feed back into our data and our platform to optimize the machine learning and the data that we use. So it's about knowing which data is the most valuable for making the correct drug disease matches.
For us, since we are actually we are like Google. We are really indexing all the videos out there. The advantage is there are literally so much video. 74% of the traffic is already video, so there's no shortage of it. So we are kind of doing millions of those videos per day, and we have right now we have the catalog of people's opinion. By far, we are the largest in the world. I don't think bigger necessarily means better, though, in this, because we are trying to understand, people's opinion. So it takes time, and these models needs to be trained to understand different nuances, and it just takes time. So we are in that journey. We are farther along in that journey, but we are nowhere near completion.
Yep, makes sense. And your businesses would not exist without this data, right? And understanding how to get access to this data, how to build upon it, how to spend your resources acquiring the right data sets, getting them to the right formats, all this stuff. I mean, that is something that doesn't tend to happen accidentally. At least I know in my case, we thought very hard about how to do data acquisition pipeline, and so on. Have you formalized processes internally around data? But what are the right data sets to go after? How do you then acquire those? And it'll vary quite differently across your businesses, because your businesses are quite different there. Have you formalized data dashboards, data acquisition pipelines? And if so, how?
For our sake, it's a dynamic set. Like, we deal with people's opinions. So I usually say this comment that we know more about Brexit than the British government does. But these are very broad topics, and there's no similarities between, like, what do people think about a product from P&G versus what do people think about Brexit. So, and we are learning in this thing. So we have, I think we have structured how we know how to break down videos and understand what people are saying. We can adjust people's opinion from country, community, cultures, and we can understand implied meaning. But this is such a massive, unstructured data world that we live in, that even of the scale that what we are doing, we are barely scratching the surface.
But you don't have, for example, a customer comes to you and says, I want to understand this particular topic, and then you have to follow a structured process and say, okay, we just don't have enough content on whatever. P&G wants some information about this product.
That happens every day for us. Like, we have lots of clients who do that. So we, on the public video also, on top of that, we have a marketplace of what we call short form video answers, where there are millions of people. We can actually ping them and ask them certain things that they answer in video, and we put that answer through the same video processing, so we understand stuff. So it happens because many of those things people haven't talked about voluntarily, so we have to kind of probe them.
So it's not an acquisition pipeline. You've created a tool that allows you to very dynamically get the answers.
Correct, yes. It's a marketplace.
Kate, what about yourself?
Yeah, so we're in a very different situation. So our data comes from multiple sources: the biomedical literature, public databases, and our own proprietary data. And we combine all this into a knowledge graph. So we're very structured in knowing which data we want to have. And we're always exploring new types of data that we bring into our knowledge graph and bring into our platform. So the learnings, as I said, the learnings that we have as we have our successful projects then feeds in and helps us understand which is the most valuable data. So yes, we do have a structured approach. We have OKRs. We're very driven to making sure we have the right data.
OKRs around data. So
yes, OKRs around data.
We want this data set by this. Okay.
Yeah.
And for us, I think it's very important to have this right from the start with a structure, but that will change over time, and especially as we grow our customer base and usage on our platform, we will use it in a different way. We have a custom-built kind of pipe running in the cloud, combining, let's say, both geospatial and semi-structured data with more classic structured data, right? And I think we see that we use this for several different things, like parts of the algorithm structures improves very fast, and others are more for kind of learning for the future as well.
Makes sense. Cool. The next subtopic here is just on culture of an AI-driven business and how that can be different. And again, relating to my own experience, but just patterns we've seen in companies we've invested in, there's almost data-driven and data science-driven businesses. There's sometimes two different cultures. There's a research group, and then there's maybe a more product or an engineering group. And you've got to marry those cultures together. You've got to make sure that you don't have one group that is in perpetual R&D. Sometimes that's not straightforward. And even the R&D group, in our case, resisted the idea of OKRs. No, we can't even decide when we're going to be able to do this. And I've seen this at recent companies we've invested in. How do you see that those two cultures working out? And have you resolved the problem? And you guys are all going through hyperscale soon, so you must have been thinking about this.
Hi, yeah, I'll take that one first. So yes, this is a big challenge for us at Healx because we've got talent both from the pharmaceutical sector and also from the tech sector. And those two groups of people aren't used to working together, so it's even more complicated than having the tech, the R&D versus the product. So what you find is we use different jargon. I'm from the pharmaceutical sector, so I've had to learn a lot about the tech jargon. And we also think in different ways. So that is a challenge. So, a pharmaceutical person does not think in an agile project management way. We're used to critical paths and go, no-go milestones, that kind of thing. So for us, it's about bringing the two groups of talent together. So we're not trying to change either side, but we're trying to meld them together. And I think it's when you can get that melding together that you really create the value. And you need systems that work for everybody. And communication is key.
Just on that on the communication point, how do you define what you need? Because in some businesses you could say, well, make it 20% faster. Or I want to do this in 1 click and not 3 clicks. With an AI-driven business, it might be sensitivity and specificity, but even that, it's quite hard for product management to tell engineers and data scientists exactly what they want, right? Have you figured out, and each of you, but since you have the mic, Kate, have you figured out how you communicate that?
Yeah, so ultimately, the value for us, the success for us is having a drug-disease match that validates in a disease model, and then we take it all the way to the clinic. Obviously, you can get clinical validation. So that's a very specific data point, but yes, there are lots of other ways of defining success around that are easier to measure, such as speed, accuracy of recall from the machine learning, etc. So yes, we have lots of discussions about this. We have lots of OKRs that help define it. But that's a really important point, and we spend a lot of time thinking about it.
So the first thing for us, I think we are a little bit fortunate because we are kind of inherently a research company using AI as uncovering insights. And our team is a little bit more matured right now. So that the division of there's a research group and then there's a tech group, for us it's kind of not as evident because just the nature of our business. But how we do kind of improve on what we do is we are kind of learning different things from the same stuff. Like, for example, recently we are modeling people's mental models. So it is basically looking at the same data and running an AI model to understand what mental stage they're in. So there you actually go in with an objective or what you're trying to do. And once you start running these models, your initial response is going to be pretty bad. So you will then train it over time to get into an acceptable range where kind of predictively we are over 70+%. So you can say that they belong into one stage. Depending on what you're trying to get to, this can take anywhere from like months to like a year, depending on the complexity of the problem is. So that's how we do that.
Yeah, and for us, I also think we've been fortunate in the way that we are almost only tech people up to now. So when we crossed kind of 20 people, we restructured the operation into squads, cross-functional squads, where you just have both product and data science and design in the same teams. So it's worked very well on 3-month cycles of development. And but I think the complexity really adds when we now start building up a big commercial organization, because they're not that agile. So they're more used to roadmaps and especially selling things on a roadmap that doesn't exist, which they are really good at.
Makes sense. So with respect to generally the vocabulary problem that we were just talking about, how do you communicate to the data science team what to do? That just happens more organically then. You just have a conversation about, this doesn't seem very accurate. This building is being positioned in this weird way and it's not working, and they just work it out together.
Exactly. So I think that we are able to tackle both long lead items and really short, immediate problems very fast in a model like this. So the crux is to get kind of these teams which are really tech-oriented as close to the market understanding as absolutely possible, and balance carefully the need for solving one thing at one customer's hand with what's needed to take the whole kind of suite or product further.
Got it. Makes sense. So one aspect of scaling, which every business faces, is how to hire talent. With AI businesses, this problem is maybe more acute because of the shortage of talent and the fact that, suddenly it's become very important for everybody to think about machine learning as part of their business, and there's a very limited talent pool, which is increasing, but there's some lag before everyone graduates, right? So what are you doing to support your businesses in terms of hiring good data scientists? Are you do you have some secrets? Or maybe you don't want to share those, but any tricks? Are you training from within? How do you look at that?
I think actually that is one of the most important success criteria when you scale a business like this. And to us, it's been circling around two important things, and that is that the talents of today, they really want to work with something that is meaningful and actually supporting a positive development, and as well as they would like to work with something deeply complex. So for us, our mission since kind of origination for the company has been to develop more sustainable and better cities faster with AI, right? So people can, I think the talents can really relate to that mission. And at the same time, if you look a little bit under the hood, you see that it's extremely complex to make that vision successful. So those two things in combination makes a very distinct value proposition for attracting talents at scale. And I think that if you're able to get that message or a message on those two key parameters out there, then you can recruit much faster and more effectively.
So mission-driven recruiting.
Yeah, very mission-driven.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I mean, at Healx, we've got a very focused mission, which is to find 100 treatments for rare diseases by 2025. So that is a very kind of a mission that a lot of people can align with, and I think in the AI sector, having a mission that's finding new medicines to treat diseases where there is currently no treatment is really motivational. So from that perspective, I think we have a head start, having that as our mission. But also because we're located in Cambridge, UK, I think there is a great talent pool there. So I think we've got a great geolocation. And it's not just on the tech side, but also on the biotech side. So there's a massive biotech ecosystem in Cambridge, UK. So we have, obviously it's still a struggle. It's not easy. We have to compete, but I do think we've got a lot of things in our favor.
I think regardless of what you do, if you're starting in this space, when you're early, it's very difficult because, it's everything else seems very shiny. So initially, we got our team from within our network. And we have built from, my co-founder was the CEO of Amazon in India. I built pretty massive companies in multiple companies. So they all came from within our network, and we begged, borrowed, and stole. Now, once you become big, none of these things actually quite matter. Now we get probably more inbound than we can hire. In between is where you need to be creative, because there is basically scale is a massive challenge. And regardless of where you try to hire them, either you cannot afford it, or you will burn too much money, or it will take too much time. So we actually did a kind of more very unorthodox. We actually kind of trained within our, using our expertise, combined expertise, we trained a pretty large force. They didn't necessarily come from an AI background, but now they are one of the world's best. So, but it took us 2 years.
So you built an internal process to really help scale people and teach new talent. Great. Now, you guys are in Norway, you guys are in Cambridge, UK, you're in 5 places at least. I've forgotten.
8 places, more like.
8 places, there you go. So are there any advantages or disadvantages to building businesses where Europe is at the center? You know, you do have a strong European presence as well. So Europe versus, like, if you were American companies, what do you see as what are the pros, what are the cons?
So I think American companies are like, we think little less and we burn faster. Whereas I think the European companies are more kind of, they work in steps. I think in general, I find the AI and machine learning skills in Europe is very good. So I actually have built one of my previous companies. I built the entire company in Portugal. They are all PhDs from like Carnegie Mellons and UPenns, but they all went back to Portugal, right? The entire team was full of PhDs. And I was absolutely impressed the kind of skill set that is there in Europe. If I had to build the same thing in the US, it will be next to impossible, given where we are. We are in Silicon Valley, where, you know, every other company is bigger than us. So Europe is very well poised for this particular thing that we are doing, especially AI and machine learning, in my opinion. Much better than US.
It helps that DeepMind came from here, and, you know, almost one of the first big successes in this space. And there's this mighty oak tree, and all these saplings come up around it, and there's some great talent. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah, for my part, I think Europe, and especially I can relate, of course, mostly to the Nordics. But I think building the business from here has a few significant advantages, and one of them is on talent, actually. Because still back home, if you're a super strong math person coming out of university, the core route today is still management consulting. And when you're building kind of a deep tech company and people start really believing in your mission and that this company could really be something, then it's really easy to attract top talent people. And I think also kind of the salary levels are a little bit lower, so that the OPEX side on the business is, or the burn, as you say in the US, the heavy burn, is lower, substantially lower actually, relating to other places that you could start the business as well.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think, you know, I echo that we have great access to talent in the UK. I think it probably would be much more competitive to build it in the US, in the biotech hubs. So from my perspective, I think it's great where we are.
Awesome. So we're almost out of time. Just, I think the last question for you guys is, you know, really, you're about to each scale in a large way. I mean, what is the single biggest thing on your minds as you enter this you know, the next few years ahead?
This is probably one of the most biased answers we can get. We'll pretend to be much bigger than we are. But I think right now our thing that in our head is we are kind of like out of a state of where we are in a hyper growth mode, but we are trying to we don't really know what is about to hit us next. We are dealing with data sets that are massive, but it is getting, you know, significantly larger, and we don't really know how we're going to handle any one of those. We have some ideas. We have built pretty significant companies in the past, but we also know that doesn't quite apply here. So the idea of the depth of scale in that, from the talent, you know, globally, and through the complexity of the questions that's coming in our way, is keeping us on our toes. We don't know the answers, but we know we have to be creative about it.
You need the process, not the answers, right? The process that gets you them. Yep.
Okay, I think one of the biggest challenges we have is convincing the pharmaceutical sector that we really can scale things sort of tenfold or more over what they're used to. So we talk to the pharmaceutical sector, the biotech investors, and they really don't believe that we can work at the scale that we know that we can work at. So the tech side get it, but the biotech side don't. So I think that's the challenge for us, is to convince them that really we are able to scale.
Super short. I think it is to prioritize the right and most scalable customer situations we have in front of us. And it's also about having a ton of fun while doing it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Super informative, certainly for me, hopefully for everybody else too. Thank you.